Good to have you with us. You're watching the news with me, Avni Raja. We're going to focus on what the expert panel has recommended with respect to the vaccines. Well, this is another major breakthrough that's coming in. The subject expert committee of the National Drug Regulator has recommended that the Bharat Biotech vaccine applicant Covaxin be approved for restricted emergency use in India. The locally made vaccine is the second to get the expert panel's nod. This after the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine that was given clearance by the expert committee group yesterday. Now, the centre has said that the expert panel has granted permission to Covaxin for the restricted use in emergency situations in public interest as an abundant precaution in clinical trial mode. Now, the DCGI, of course, now has to take the final call for giving the final nod for both these vaccines. Let me, in fact, go across to my colleague Ayushman, who's joining us at this point in time. Ayushman, so both these vaccines have been given the green signal by the expert group, but the final now nod will come in from the DCGI.
Yes, in fact, the final nod remains with the DCGI, and that remains a mere formality. Because of the recommendation of the subject expert committee, it is in all likelihood both of the vaccines are going to be approved in India, though the conditions are there. The restricted emergency use has been defined, and that will, with the guidelines come from the DCGI as well as the Health Ministry, there will be further refined lines as to how both these vaccines will work out. But for now, the big news is that two of the candidates, one of the indigenous candidates, has received the nod from the subject expert group.
Yes, and Ayushman, if you can also take us through the official statement that has come in terms of the recommendations that have been made both for the Oxford vaccine as well as for the Bharat Biotech vaccine.
Yes, Avni. In fact, in terms of the Serum Institute, because Serum Institute has also got the Covishield, it has got an international build study which has been conducted in the UK, and it has already seen the approval in United Kingdom. In India, it is going on in the third phase. So the subject expert committee has clearly said that grant of permission of restricted emergency use of vaccine has been given, and it is subject to multiple regulatory conditionalities to Serum Institute. But in the case of the Bharat Biotech, if you see, the grant of permission of restricted emergency situation in public interest has been highlighted. At the same time, it has been said that it should be done in clinical trial mode, especially in context of the infection by the mutant strain. So this means, Avni, that Bharat Biotech has accepted in front of the subject expert committee, because if you remember, this is the fourth meeting of the subject expert committee. It has been accepted by the company that the inactivated virus form which is there, the Bharat Biotech's vaccine, works in even in the mutant strain. So we have seen the cases of the mutant strain. So in public interest, because not much of the data is available right now. So in the trial mode, because as and when the trial gets conducted, as and when the data comes, the efficacy is decided, because even the Bharat Biotech's efficacy is not known. So currently, on those conditionalities, this approval has been given to Bharat Biotech. The final guidelines, we are being told by the experts who understand the important aspect of this approval. Clearly, they are outlining the fact that the data will continue to be reviewed by the DCGI, but for now, the conditional approval, which has been given to the Bharat Biotech's Covaxin, has been given, and it has been said that in the context of the mutant strain, it has been accepted that somewhere the mutant strains, the vaccine's efficacy in mutant strain is there. Although the data which we are searching right now, the peer-reviewed data of safety, peer-reviewed data, the data on the efficacy, in fact, Covaxin's total candidature nomination is also not fulfilling. But despite that, this has been given because we are being told by the sources that somewhere the safety has been determined. The large number of people who have been there, about more than 13,000, is what the company had earlier confirmed. And also, it is the vaccine which is working on a whole virion basis, which is the inactivated form of the virus, the throughout use form of what we are being told. So that was something which worked in the benefit of the Covaxin. But in the broader context, we can tell you that the final modalities are still pending with the DCGI, who will be giving nod, and there will be further final guidelines to be given to both these companies as well as Serum as well as Bharat Biotech. But because Serum has got the MHRA approval, they won't be having much of the conditionalities, but definitely conditions will be there. Precautions will be told for the Bharat Biotech's Covaxin, which is the indigenous candidate.
Yes, absolutely, Ayushman. And that's an extremely important point that you've pointed out there as well. Thank you so much for joining us with all of those details. In fact, let's go across to our guests who are joining me to understand a little bit more of what all of this really means. Dr. Anant Bhan, researcher, global health, bioethics and health policy, is joining me, as well as Dr. Rahul Pandit, director, critical care, Fortis Hospital, as well as member of the COVID-19 Taskforce in Maharashtra. Thank you, both of you, for joining us on the show today. Dr. Anand Bhan, let me come to you first. Of course, this is great news that the Bharat Biotech vaccine has also got the nod as far as the special expert group is concerned. But in what the recommendation has been, and here I just want to go through that point. It says grant permission for restricted emergency use of Covaxin in public interest, grant permission for restricted use as an abundant precaution, and Covaxin still in clinical trial mode. How do you read this, especially in comparison to what has been said as far as the Oxford vaccine is concerned?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So I'm actually a bit surprised by the recommendation, and the reason for that is, we've heard now on multiple fora. In fact, I was in a meeting which Niti Aayog had convened, where the health secretary had said that there were two criteria. One was either local efficacy data, or a foreign regulator making a recommendation for emergency use, and then local bridging data being available in India. Now, Covaxin doesn't satisfy any of those two criteria. We don't have local efficacy data as of yet, which has been either made public or published. So I'm a bit surprised, actually, that this decision has been made. Also, the way the wording is there right now in the PIB circular also, reads a bit strange, because, it is in some way divergent from the permission for the Serum Institute vaccine. Now, all of us are very hopeful of and supportive of Indian science and domestic innovation, and one would hope that Covaxin works. But I think we certainly need more transparency. I mean, if you look at the US FDA decision, it was live cast. All the supportive data which was presented was in the public domain. They looked at every element, including the ethics element. The UK MHRA went public with a long press conference explaining what was the rationale for their decision. And right now what we have is just, snippets of information which come through, maybe a few paragraphs, and not a lot of clarity around how these decisions are made and on what basis are they being made. So, I'm hopeful that there is substantive data which is behind this decision, but I would certainly urge the government and especially the regulator to kindly come forward with all of that data in the interest of transparency and building confidence, and hopefully that will be done in the next couple of days as the formal announcement is made.
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Pandit, I want to get your view as well on the same point, but I just want to read out, like Dr. Bhan was pointing out, as to the wordings for Covaxin that in the official statement here. It says very clearly, grant of permission for restricted use in emergency situation in public interest as an abundant precaution in clinical trial mode, especially in the context of infection by mutant strains, to Bharat Biotech International Limited. That's the wording there as far as Bharat Biotech is concerned. And the wordings for Serum Institute, it simply says grant of permission for restricted emergency use of vaccine subject to multiple regulatory conditionalities. How do you read the difference in wordings between the permission being granted for both these vaccines, given the fact that we don't have the a lot of the data for the Bharat Biotech vaccine yet?
So for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, the Serum Institute vaccine, the MHRA has already granted permission. So it was basically, there is some data available for phase 3, not from India but from outside, and they had an elaborate discussion about the whole permission being granted in MHRA, and that's how the wording for the Serum Institute vaccine has been done. For Bharat Biotech, I am also hopeful that there is robust data which is being produced and shown to the subject expert committee, which we are not aware of, because otherwise, to make such a recommendation, it would look like that the recommendation is made in the context of the new mutant strain, because it is a different kind of a vaccine and it probably is not targeting the spike protein, which is going to be the mutant decider, and that's why this may have been given in the public interest. That's how I would read it, but it's too early to sort of speculate. I don't think we should speculate. We should wait for the data to be made public and transparent by the regulator as well as by the DCGI, so that people can be informed. And that's the most important thing for a confidence building exercise for the entire nation to take vaccine. Transparency of data in public domain is the most important thing. And I hope that is sort of coming forward in the next few days.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Pandit. Dr. Bhan, in your view, is there, anything at all? Because so far we've been assuming that whatever the expert panel recommends, the DCGI going ahead and giving the nod is just a procedural, and that nod is definitely going to come in. Perhaps it's an assumption that we can make as far as the Oxford vaccine is concerned. But given these wordings, given the way this is being, put forth at this point in time, and the fact that the interim analysis efficacy data of phase 3 trial is not available, and the phase 3 study design data is not yet been disclosed. Some of the points that we've been talking about as far as the transparency goes, that we don't have as yet. Given that, do you believe that it's an assumption we can make that the DCGI will go ahead and approve the Bharat Biotech vaccine as well at this point?
Well, it's likely that they will. The advisory committee is an advisory committee, but it's made up of technical experts who are subject experts in this domain, and they do advise the DCGI. And so I would be surprised if the CDSCO went against that recommendation. But that having been said, ultimately it's the regulator who is responsible and has the decision-making capacity. So it's likely that they will probably put more substantive definitions and also tell us a little bit around what are these permissions, what does it mean for clinical trial mode. For example, are we moving from an ongoing clinical trial into a countrywide clinical trial, literally into thousands of people without any clear definition of how are you going to ensure clinical trial conditions at such a large scale? What is going to be the difference between the two doses time-wise? What's going to be the spacing? What exactly are the requirements? Is it just consent? Because I think consent was also something that they talked about for the serum vaccine. But in this case, if you're talking about clinical trial mode, what else will you require? Because then it's almost like you're giving it in a research setting, and you will have to do obviously long-term follow-up. You have to ensure that people report adverse events immediately. You track them and you follow up. So all of that is something which we need more clarity on. So I'm hopeful that once the formal decision is made at the CDSCO level, that they will actually put in more details, because right now what we have is really scanty information and it's difficult to make head and tail out of it. And as I said, in the interest of transparency and also clarity, because, at the end of the day, this kind of vaccine, once it's available for mass usage, will be delivered at various sites, sometimes at smaller facilities. And it's good to have clarity around what is the regulatory permission, how is it to be given, what are the conditions under which it is to be given, what is the requirement for data to be collected, and how is the regulator tracking it on an ongoing basis. Because for routine vaccines, it's usually the health system which does the tracking, but here the regulator will have to play a very proactive role because it's in clinical trial mode.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we are yet to hear from the regulator at this point in time. As far as both of these vaccines are concerned, hopefully that word will come in soon. But Dr. Pandit, we have of course seen the dry runs that have been carried out today as well across the country to ensure that the vaccination drives go out smoothly once it actually starts. In your view, is that sufficient? Because what we've seen in some of the Western countries, there has been chaos as well in terms of the entire vaccination drive, the way it has been carried out. Do you think we are sufficiently well prepared right now?
So these dry runs or field runs, what we call, are extremely important to sort of try and smoothen out the process which is being laid out. So when I was just sort of wanting to talk about that when a standard operating procedure is being made, you write it up and then you need to basically put it to test in a dry run. so that you actually understand that whatever you had thought in your mind when you put up that standard operating procedure actually is working out well or not. And that's where the dry runs come into the phase. I think this was the second one which happened in the last couple of weeks, and it probably would be that as we go forward we may find that there are some glitches, and as long as they are not major glitches, I think there would be a correction of the processes as we may need to do it. But that's going to be probably an ongoing thing, and it would probably reach to some point where the process smoothens out quite well. We have a very good, as I keep on saying, we have a very good pediatric vaccination program. We just need to get the same point of quality in the adult vaccination program now. So it is early days, and it needs to be tested again in the field as to see how it is going to work. But the dry runs is the way to work, and dry runs is the only thing which will tell us where are the lapses in the processes right now.
All right, Dr. Bhan, I just want to come back to the Covaxin approval here. The fact that it's been given this nod without completing the phase 3 trial, on what basis would the expert panel have gone ahead and given this approval without, the phase 3 trial being completed at this point in time? What would have given them that confidence that this can be approved even before the phase 3 trial is completed?
Sure. So I think what they have access to probably is data on safety and immunogenicity, some of which is also already in the public domain, not yet published, but I think at least put out in the public domain. It's likely that they also had access to some interim efficacy data. Now, that interim data is probably very early level data because, the study has only been ongoing now for a few months. And actually, we have all seen reports of challenges with recruitment, etc. So, I mean, they're still recruiting. They haven't reached their recruitment complete target as well. So if anything, the data which is available on efficacy would be pretty short term and not a complete data set. So it can probably only be an interim and early data. Maybe that is what they have gone by in addition to the safety and immunogenicity data. But again, which is why any such decision should be grounded in a sound rationale. And that should be available for all of us to see, because if we don't have access to the data, we don't know on what basis the decisions are made, then certainly questions will linger, and that's not healthy for the vaccine landscape. Because at the end of the day, you can launch the vaccine, but people will only take the vaccine when they have clarity around any doubts about the vaccine.
Yes, in fact, that was exactly going to be my question, Dr. Bhan. Do you see that as an issue cropping up, as and when both these vaccines get the approval of the DCGI in terms of actually taking them? Because, it's going to be sort of decided by the government, at least in the initial phases, about who gets it, how they get it, and which vaccines they get. So do you see that as an issue really cropping up about the choice between these two vaccines?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we have two vaccines, then, the government will have to make a decision. How are they going to decide who gets what? Is it state-wise? Is it based on facilities? Is it based on availability? Are they going to sort of divide the country and decide that one section of the country gets one kind of a vaccine and the other country part gets another kind of the vaccine? So all of those will be questions which obviously the health ministry will have to make a decision on and also make public, and because there might be people who might choose or might be more comfortable with one kind of a vaccine over the other for various reasons. But I don't know how that will be figured out from a logistics purpose. I don't see that you will have a choice. If you are in a particular place, it's likely that you will only have one choice of a vaccine which is made available. Again, that's why it's good that we address that issue now upfront by being transparent and making the data and the rationale for the decisions public, so that people either way, whichever vaccine you get, you have a certain level of confidence that it's based on a decision which has looked at the data adequately, and hence you can go ahead and get vaccinated. The infrastructure is important, the delivery is important, the dry runs are important, but confidence building in the vaccination strategy and the vaccination choices is, in my opinion, fairly important as well.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Pandit, in your view, what do you see as the major challenges that are going to sort of emerge as we get to the mass inoculation phase? Phase 1, of course, is pretty clear because they have already been identified who are going to get the people going to get the vaccine in the beginning. But post the first phase, what are the major challenges that you see?
So even before that, I would like to just point out one thing. Now that the vaccine has been rolled out, whichever gets the permission by the DCGI, we will actually find that the recruitment for volunteers to continue the clinical trial is going to drop down, because people may choose to just wait and let their turn come when they would actually have a vaccine which is available. Why to enroll for a clinical trial is going to be a big question. The second question which you asked is what are the difficulties which we are going to face. So the first 30 crores, which is we are talking about till July or August to be vaccinated, I think that's fairly laid out. The next population which we are going to basically see is going to depend on how the vaccine process goes through in the first 6 months, and then we will have probably the next line of people who are vulnerable, which is going to be 50 and below, who have got some comorbidities, and then it will be the younger population. India has got a very large young population, so I don't know whether we'll be reaching to that stage very quickly, or it's going to take us a long time to reach to that stage. So there is going to be a lot of planning. It is going to be a dynamic process. It is not going to be something which will be easy to decide now. But I'm very happy that at least the first phase is clearly laid out, and that sort of paves the way for us to plan up the next phase, which gives us around 3-4 months to do it in the right way.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Bhan, final word to you. If you can, just reiterate the fact that this is also not the time that people can afford to let their guards down just because the vaccines are coming in. This is perhaps a time when we need to be abundantly precautious as well.
Sure, absolutely. So vaccines, as and when they become available, are just one part of our strategy. It's likely, given the shortage of vaccine doses, we don't have enough vaccine doses for everyone, which is why we have a prioritization exercise. That we need to ensure that all of us remain, very, very careful about the precautions required. Even if you have gotten a vaccine, no vaccine is 100% efficacious. Please make sure that you continue using masks, you follow physical distancing, you use hygiene measures. That's the way of life we have to follow, at least for the next short while, till we have herd immunity. And it's in the interest of you, your families, your colleagues, and your communities to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Anand Bhan, Dr. Rahul Pandit, thank you so much for joining us with your perspective. Of course, now the final nod is the ball is in the court of the DCGI at the moment, and we are waiting to hear officially from them on the road ahead before the vaccination drives actually start.